to give us a quick presentation.
Thank you, Konstantin. First of all, welcome everybody. Let me introduce my executive team. So for myself, I am Benjamin Kawak, the founder and CEO of Aerospace. A little bit about my background. Before starting Aerospace, I used to be a space engineer. I spent 10 years in the space industry in big agencies like the European Space Agency, in Airbus and OHB in Bremen. Before I started to fund Aerospace in June 2018. And today in our call, we have Betty, our CEO, and Tsveta, our CFO. I will let Betty to introduce herself, and then I will let Tsveta.
Good afternoon. I'm indeed the CEO of 3D Aerospace. I also have a background in space industry. I've worked for 7 years in test, assembly, integration for Airbus. And I give the ball to you, Sveta.
Thank you, Betty, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tsveta Ivanova. I'm the CFO, and I have extensive background in finance, worked for one of the largest North American banks in treasury, extensive experience with funding and investments. Thank you for your time, and I will give it back to Ben.
Thank you, Tsveta and Betty. Let me share my screen, and then we can go with our presentation of today. We had a presentation last month related to the technology. So for this month presentation, we wanted to focus it more about the solutions and services we provide to our customers. 3D Aerospace is a startup located in France, Europe, where we provide geolocalization services and connected maps. And Divine is our first brand related to the appliance of our technology in the field of smart farming and more particularly in the field of smart viticulture. We have 4 main challenges today in the field of viticulture. The first one is related to the tracking of grape growth and yield. In order to actually assess the yield in the vineyard, we need to have 3 measurements. The first one is the production of wine trees per hectare, multiplied by the number of clusters per one tree, multiplied by the weight of each of the cluster. And this normally gives a yield estimation on a yearly basis of a vineyard. Today, the main challenge related to the yield estimation, this task is performed manually by counting manually the number of trees per row and by counting manually the number of clusters, and then by weighting actually after we harvest the cluster. This method provides actually an error of plus or minus 15 up to 25% year on year, which provide a lot of challenges related to the logistics and related to the how many hectoliters of wine which can be produced after the harvest. The second challenge is related to the detection of dead plants and diseases. A vineyard has always diseases, so it will never be disease-free vineyard. So disease is part of the natural cycle of a vineyard. The issue with respect to diseases is if they are late spotted, then there is a risk of spreading rapidly across the entire vineyard, which will affect both qualitatively and quantitatively the number of clusters and the quality of the grapes per tree. More or less, every year there is between 10 to 15% of the vineyard trees affected by one disease. None of them actually will harm the vineyards, but it's important when they are actually detected rapidly in order to limit the risk for the vineyard's health. The third challenge related to the vineyard is related to the managing of the workforce. Most of the workforce, both human resources and materials, are actually dispatched in the different parcels of the vineyard, and they are working remotely. We have as well a high level of seasonality in the labor force. Normally we need much higher number of workers during the harvest season than during the winter. There is currently a shortage of qualified workers all around Europe because of a physical work with minimum salary wage, which lead actually to quite poor job satisfactions. So the managing actually of workforce in farms, and more particularly in vineyards, is actually increasing challenge for a number of vineyard owners. Last but not least is protecting the environment. There is a fair number of pesticides, herbicides, chemical products used on the day-to-day management of the vineyard in order to limit, for example, the weeds, in order to protect the trees, which can damage on the longer term the environment. With the latest regulation in France and in Europe, there is more and more restriction to the quantity allowed use per hectare in the vineyard. And actually the consumers of wine are demanding on more and more greener products to drink actually organic wine. So there is an urge to minimize the number of pesticides and chemical products in the vineyards, while at the same time protecting the environment for the longer run. So what do we provide us at 3D Aerospace with our brand Divines? Our solution is made of 3 elements in terms of technology. The first and main actually pillar of our technology is our EMS receiver. What we can see on the left-hand side of the picture is our GNSS GPS receiver equipped with 7 cameras deployed and retrofitted on the outside of the tractor. While the tractor is driving in the vineyard, we are collecting 2 streams of information. The first one is the GPS location of the receiver, and the second stream of information is related to the visual information captured by the 7 cameras. We send these 2 streams of information at the end of the day to our cloud database, where thanks to the machine learning algorithm, we process automatically the images and detect anomalies. This anomaly will be then mapped into our 3D aerospace map, thanks to the geolocation provided by the GPS. And then we can provide the location and detection of anomalies. We can as well provide a support for the workforce management. And most importantly for our alpha customers, we can provide a weekly update of a vineyard growth tracking in terms of number of grapes, number of trees, and the maturity of the grapes. So if we go very deep in the technology, how it works is we have a machine learning algorithm, meaning that the more data we collect from our EMS receiver, the more efficient and the more accurate we will become. From our Divine technology, then we will send all this data to our machine learning database, where we will actually detect the missing plant, detect the diseases, and signal the anomalies. And all of this thanks to our in-house algorithm. And the more data we get from the Divine's technology, the better accurate and the better efficiency we can get from our free services. In terms of benefits for the customers, we have a huge time efficiency. We can save up to 25% of a weekly workload of a vineyard owner. By how? By doing actually less time spending on tracking vineyard growth and yield, because we can automatize this task and provide far more accurate data than the manual count. We can support and help with the managing of the workforce and the day-to-day activities in the vineyards. And then the vineyard owner and our customers can spend less time on then handling the diseases and anomalies, because thanks to our tool, we can map directly all the diseases and anomalies in a map. And then thanks to the time saving, we can focus more on the customer relationship. We can focus more on the vineyard management on the longer run. So we are saving time on the current manual task and freeing them up time for a better management for the longer run for the vineyard. We have all-in-one digital concepts. So all our tools can be accessed remotely through a smartphone or web applications. So the vineyard owner, our customers, can manage remotely completely his vineyard by actually locating all the disease, all the anomalies, the workforce in the real-time mapping, as well as for the planning activities related to the day-to-day management of a vineyard. If we sum up then the information related to the anomalies, if we sum up the information provided by the workforce, if we can then predict in terms of the yield of the vineyards, and then we can as well communicate better between the different workforce materials and the manager in the farm, all of this sum up will actually reduce the chemical usage and production costs. With better information, with better digital information related to the current health of the vineyard owner and manager can actually decide where to focus his time and energy and apply chemical products and fertilizers on a very restricted area which is in need, and then remove all this homogeneous chemical appliance which is currently the norm in vineyards. In terms of testing and our current roadmap of technology, we have signed up already now with 2 alpha customers, one being today. Another discussion and negotiations are still ongoing with a number of alpha customers. We have in total 5 different steps in the technology roadmap. The first one, and this is nearly completed now, is actually we are mapping all the different vineyards of our alpha customers, and we are currently training our machine learning algorithm to detect missing trees in the vineyard. Starting from July, we are going actually to continue the training of algorithm to detect flowers, grapes in the early stage, and follow the yield estimation of this grape in order to actually follow up on the maturity of the grapes till the harvesting, which is planned by the end of September. In October and November, we will just finalize and clean up all our services and algorithm in order to be ready to launch commercially the Divine services by the end of November, beginning of December. That was a short introduction then to the main advantages and the services for Divines. And then I would like to thank you for your time, and we are welcome any type of questions. Thank you.
Yes, thanks a lot, Ben, for the short presentation. So now the stage would be open to any questions. Yes, Mr. Schinkel raised his hand. You can just unmute and pose your question.
Hi, thank you very much for the presentation. Very, very interesting. I would be keen to understand a bit better what your revenue model is going to be forward. I mean, specifically, I guess you're probably selling the hardware. I mean, is there any recurring revenues from software or so? I would like to understand that. And maybe actually earlier question is, or what are your how are you funded at the moment? So what are kind of how you're funded, and what's your cash burn? I mean, how much money do you need? When do you need funding again? And so maybe start with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I will handle the first part of the question, and then Tsveta will handle the second part of the question. So the first part of the question related then to the business model. And that is one of our innovation as well. We are actually not selling the hardware, but we are selling the services related to the hardware. So we are proposing a monthly subscription related to the 3 services I mentioned, which are the geolocation and detection of missing tree, the yield estimation and the maturity tracking of the grapes, and the day-to-day management support for the vineyards management. And we are proposing then actually a monthly subscription for these 3 services, and we are leasing the hardware. So the hardware is just the enabler of our technology. And we opted for this option because right now most of our competitors are actually selling the hardware and not providing the subscription services. And for us as a startup in terms of cash flow management, it's just healthier, and we can actually have better visibility with a monthly subscription business model rather than selling the hardware. Tsveta, do you want to handle the second part?
Yes. So if I summarize, maybe start with how we're funded today. So we have been able to secure funding from European Commission. We have also obviously we have secured a number of grants, also from the French government. This is the first campaign we're doing private, so we're inviting external investors to join. And a very important piece of the campaign is also that any amount, as long as we've secured 50,000, which we have already done, anything there from that part, we are able to match the funding through BPI, so the French Bank for Investments. And based on these forecasts, we have a very precise cash flow in terms of how much funds we would need. We've made it on a monthly basis even. So as long as we're able to acquire at least 100,000 through the Fund Donation, having that matched by BPI, the first time that we would need additional funding would be beginning of next year. So that would mean for us that we will start looking for financing towards end of this year, and at that point we would either look for additional crowdfunding or venture capitalists or angel investors. We are still looking at all options. In principle, there are interested parties who would like to invest for equity, but we are for now trying to work our cash flows and financing without inviting external equity investors. But that's our planning. Not sure if I covered all the questions, but happy to elaborate on any if needed.
No, thank you. That was helpful. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Sveta and Ben, for the answers. Are there additional questions from the audience? If not, I would just dive in with a question that we received in advance. So Ben, you talked about the 2 alpha customers that you were already able to acquire. Could you go a bit into detail on the size of the vineyards that they're operating?
Yeah, sure. So the first alpha customer is Domaine de Candy, which is actually a vineyard located in south of Toulouse. Here we are talking about a vineyard of 25 hectares. And this vineyard is very interesting for us. Why? Is because they have different species, let's say, of trays, of vineyard trays. Starting from very old one, which is maybe 35 years plus old vineyard trays, to very young ones, which is less than 4 years old trays. And for us, that vineyard was quite important because for the machine learning detection, we need to have a variety of trays and variety of shapes. That's why we were quite keen actually to sign a collaboration, a partnership with them to develop further our algorithm. The second vineyard is actually a cooperative. So it's an association society representing close to 500 vineyards owners in south of France. And here we are working with an old French castle, I would say, owner, who has close to 55 hectares of vineyards, top quality in terms of brand. A minimum age for these vineyard trees is 25 years. So here, one of the interesting part and why actually Divine is quite as well important for them is for them vineyard trees are not a commodity like vegetables or fruits. So from 1 year to another, the tree will stay there. So that's the reason why actually for them it's quite important that they know by heart what's the current status of the health of the vineyard. So that's the second alpha customers we signed up with. And the 2 other, which will shortly come, are both private vineyard owners. One of them has got more than 100 hectares of vineyards in south of France, and the second one has got 25 hectares of vineyards.
Okay, thanks a lot. So there's actually an additional question on top of that, because the return on investment for the vineyard owners hasn't been showed just yet. You talked about a cost saving or a labor saving between 15 and 25% earlier in the presentation. Just to have a brief estimation, how much cost for that respective vineyards could the vineyard owner actually save by deploying the Divine's application? And on the other hand, what is the cost for the vineyard owner on a yearly basis, maybe, to have that consideration?
Yeah, sure. So on this question, then I think we need to split the answer into 2 parts. Mm-hmm. The first part is related actually to the cost saving. So It will all depends on the size of the vineyards. Of course, there are, as I said, for the counting on the number of trees, counting on the missing trees, counting on the number of grapes. Normally, you have half of a full-time employee for 10 hectares doing this all year long, from March to September. So we are talking about, actually, in terms of money, we are talking about a budget of close to 10,000 euros spent for this manual task activities. On our side, then the first subscription model for this, let's say, 10 hectare size vineyard will cost them 5,000 euros per year. With this amount of then money, what they will receive is an updated digital map of the vineyard, updated every week as soon as we have actually a data set coming from the EMS receiver, showing the location of missing trees, showing the number of missing trees, then providing the information related to the anomalies, as well as monitoring the growth of the grapes maturity. That's the second side then of the answer to this question about the gain by using our services. Right now, there is no clear method or no commercial services providing information related to the maturity tracking of a vineyard, of the grapes in the vineyards. So for big vineyards, when they are harvesting the grapes, they are harvesting in 1 or 2 days, and then they harvest the whole, let's say, grapes available in the vineyard. But what we realize is actually the vineyard are not, or the grapes are not homogeneous, and the maturity of the grapes depends on where you are in the parcel. And why all the alpha customers right now are very interesting by our services is through our map, they can actually see the different grades of maturity of the grapes in the vineyard. And by doing so, actually, they are planning to harvest based on the information we provide to them. And by harvesting actually based on the maturity, they will engage on the quality of the wines is one of the very important factors in the winemaking process. And right now, there is no service available on the market who can provide this type of information. So the gain, and this is much more important than only, let's say, the cost saving, is by providing this information, it can change completely the way of harvesting the grapes in the vineyard, and that will change completely the process as well of then picking up the grapes and mixing them up for winemaking.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Schinkel.
Yes, I have another question. This data you're collecting, I mean, about diseases and also yield of the wine, I mean, I presume that's as well interesting for other parties as well. I mean, wine merchants or something like that. Have you thought about like selling this data to those kinds of people? And second question as well, commercial launch in December. That's fairly soon. So what are the milestones? What are the steps, or what could go wrong before you? And how do you have to think about this commercial launch? Are you actually selling your service to a specific one of the 2 vineyards you said you talked about earlier? Is this what could go wrong in that, and what are the breakpoints? Thanks.
Always a very complex questions to address, so I will do my best then to not miss any part of the question. Yeah, to our surprises, and in a very good way, we have been contacted by a number of people which we did not expect at the beginning, actually, of our adventure. One of them is insurance company. They are very interested actually to get our digital maps to insure directly their customers. By having them, our map in this case, they will be able to track remotely, let's say, the quality of the vineyard, and then they can as well do differential mapping before and after an event, like a flooding or a thunderstorm or weather event, and this without having even the need actually to go on the field. So insurance is one of the customers which is appealing to us right now to form actually collaboration and partnership. to work then directly with them and with the current customers. This is the first possibility of portfolio diversification we have. The second, as well, unexpected customer we receive, except vineyard owners, is chemical products manufacturer themselves. They would like to as well have access to our data, not, let's say, to spy on the customers, but to assess actually the efficiency of their products directly in the customer facilities. Right now, this method is still done manually, so they are checking the quality of the products by going on the field and then waiting 5, 10, 15 days after appliance of chemical products. And they are very interesting in our product to see if we can make differential mapping after and before application of the products and see how actually the vineyard will react directly in the customer facilities. So we have been contacted by Belgium, which is a French company, number 3 in terms of manufacturer of chemical products, who would like then to sign up a partnership with us and then test our technology. The last then diversification opportunity we had is through our technology. Of course, when we can do disease mapping, we can do yield tracking, and we can do management of the human resources, as well as the geolocation of materials. But one of the services which have been appealing to our alpha customers is our ability as well to have a vineyard in 3D modeling. And this want to be used actually for e-marketing tool for promoting their wine to the customers. And this we didn't expect as well that will be appealing to our customers, but following the COVID crisis, to have e-marketing has been very strong request from our customers. And this is why they are, let's say, suggesting very strongly that we develop this service as soon as possible and to have it available. Then going to the second part of the question, yeah, this is definitely part of our business model. Why we do leasing as well is not only to have, let's say, monthly revenues, but is as well to have the ownership of the data. If we sell the hardware, we lose this ownership of data. If we do leasing, we still have this ownership of data. And this is why it's quite important for us that we are a service provider and we are not a hardware provider, because it's quite key for us that we remain the owner of this data there. All of our alpha customers actually right now would like to continue for next year commercialization. And this is the aim of actually having them on board quite early during the experimentation phase, is because if they then are satisfied and convinced with the easiness of our technology, they both have close to in total, we are talking about 1,200 vineyard owners, because they are cooperatives, so they are quite big in France. So if one of these actually 4 alpha customers sign up with us, we have already hundreds of orders coming in the next month. This is why we decided to work with them during the experimentation, because if one of them sign up, then we are sure that next year sales will already ramp up. In terms of risk, yeah, Betty?
Sorry. No, I just wanted to add, to build on this a bit from some details from the operations. So we are testing this year until the end of the summer and maybe September. But we have already prepared our assembly line with the idea of assembling and testing several units, a few tenths of units for next year, depending on the demand. So we have done this investment, and we have a plan for staggered investment. So depending about how much orders we get, we will reinvest, automatize some parts, some stations of the assembly. In terms of the digital tools, we are still working on the app. So the app that the farmer will use to communicate with the device is ready and being tested. So we have a version working, which is part of the whole testing plan. And we're also building the database behind it that will receive all of the data. while developing and finalizing our machine learning algorithm, which will get smarter the more data we get. So what could go wrong? I mean, the main focus for us is definitely to have the right amount of energy put in the scale-up. Don't invest too much into seeing it too big and manufacturing too many, because you need your cash flow. And make sure that your product is really customer-centric and answer the need. So right now we're doing the sweet spot, but not investing too much in too much inventory. We're still agile enough to tune a few details on the technology if required during the testing phase. So that's why we will pay attention and make sure that we don't go full in, and we wait we have key milestones in September, in October, in December to monitor actually the result of the testing phase and release batches for assembly and testing. And also being prepared for next February, which will be the very early start of next year's season. So preparing for new customer, their training on the app.
And,
so
and
sorry.
And just to even add further to that, as Betty mentioned, we have the different milestones per month. So we would start ordering new equipment and new pieces September, October, December. So we are ready to have everything assembled on time. So the commercialization that we have in end of November, December, that's basically us being able to present to a big event which happens at that period of time in December. But we would already have, our planning is to have pre-orders, especially by the alpha customers for next year, which we would have ordered as autumn comes in, so we can assemble on time. So that's also calculated in our cash flow that we do this investment early or later this year.
And then just maybe to sum up and finalize to answer to this question, biggest risk then is as well technology. We are a deep tech startup. We have a lot of technology involved. We are using the latest, actually, Galileo services. So we don't use only the, let's say, the well-known GPS signals. We are using as well the latest Galileo European signals. And we are one of the first actually using these signals. We have a special agreement with the European Commission. That's part of our unique selling point as well. We can have an accuracy of 30 centimeter real time without corrections. So technology is a big risk. We have a lot to develop. The way we handle actually the situation is we are doing in parallel the development of the EMS, the development of a database, and the development of a smartphone application. So we are not waiting for each of the three technology to be ready to start developing the other, but we're actually progressing in parallel to make sure that we are not too much dependent on one of the three pillars. That's the reason why, for example, right now on our machine learning algorithm, we can detect trees, missing trees with an accuracy of 80%, although we don't have yet all the finalized prototypes. So once we will have, let's say, the prototype, we already know that our machine learning algorithm, the pure performance, can detect right now 80% of missing trees. With time to come, then we are actually aiming at 90% detection rate by November 2021.
Okay, thanks a lot, Betty, Sveta, and Ben, for the extensive answer to that question. Ben, I have an additional question on top of that. You just mentioned that you're using the latest Galileo signals, especially for the purpose of the accuracy. Are there other reasons why this service is superior and why you have to use this in order to have your competitive advantage over the standard GPS system?
Yeah, thanks, Konstantin, about this question. GPS has been here for long and has been used by actually billions of users in smartphones, in cars, in trains, in planes, and the technology is not to be questioned. It's very robust and very stable. One of the drawbacks of the GPS signals is its inaccuracy in terms of then precision. If we want to do a very high positioning, meaning that by high decimmetric or centimetric level of accuracy positioning, then right now with a GPS signal is not possible, and we need to use additional equipment for correction purposes. With the Galileo signals, it's much newer in terms of technology than the GPS satellites. And we are actually developing all the technology in-house at 3D Aerospace to be able to decode and to be able to interpret these Galileo signals. And that will be in September 2021, so in a couple of days, we will be the first company in Europe and around the world to be able to decode these new Galileo signals. And the powerfulness of these Galileo signals is we will get 30 centimeter accuracy without having the need of any additional correction services. That is quite important for us in terms of vineyards and in terms of design services, but it will be even further and more important for any follow-up appliance of our technology in other industries.
Okay. Thanks a lot. And then the last question that I received in advance. Ben, so currently you're starting the service with 2 alpha customers. How many alpha customers do you plan to implement your solution on in the alpha customer phase? And then you talked about 1,200 customers that are related to these alpha customers if they're satisfied with the solution. How many customers are you expecting to need in order to reach break even with your service?
Yeah. For the financial break-even part, then I will let Sveta to address this part of the question. For the first part, we have been quite successful actually with our alpha campaign. We have been actually published on a couple of articles on the French newspaper and the specialized viticulture newspaper, and we have quite some momentum actually right now. As we have 6 prototypes for the experimentation, to my surprise, actually, we had to decline a couple of potential customers who were willing to do the experimentation with us for this year, mainly because we didn't have sufficient amount of prototypes. And right now we have to really focus on the gathering of data and then the adjustment of our algorithm to make sure of the quality of our services. So we will we cap the number of alpha customers to 6. We know that there is room and there are more potential alpha customers who would like then to sign up with us. But with them, actually, what we are doing right now is we are keeping them informed about the latest information from our alpha customers. And we are in negotiation with them to be one of the first customers for next year, paying customers after the commercialization. In terms of then how many customers I expect for next year, of course, this is an estimation, and it will all depends on, let's say, on the quality of data we will collect and the quality of services we will provide. But we are planning in terms of target to have 50 customers for next year. That is a target, and then from that years onwards, then we are just increasing the number of customers. The good thing of viticulture is there is a lot of communication between vineyard owners. So if a service works, actually the level of sharing of information and promotion between professionals is huge. So we are hoping then to have this actually cross communication between professionals to promote our services. Sveta?
Yeah, thank you. As to the break even, we based on our forecast and customers that we keep and are able to attract new customers, we would reach break even in 2024. That's in our both in our base and target scenarios. And in 2024, that would mean close to 1,600 customers, which is 3% of the targeted market, and already actually even less than the customers that Ben mentioned are related within the cooperatives.
Okay, thanks a lot. Then, does anyone in the audience have additional questions to the management of 3D Aerospace? If not, I also do not have any questions left on my list. Yeah, then I would like to thank all the participants for showing up and yeah, posing their extensive questions. And of course, also thanks a lot to Betty, Sveta, and Ben for the extensive answer to those questions. If there are any questions after the meeting, then of course, feel free to contact 3 Aerospace via the platform. You can reach out to Ben or Sveta or Betty if you have any additional questions. And yeah, thanks a lot for your participation and have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much
Have a
for your
good day.
time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.